Welcome back to our workshop. I'm Scott Bennett and I'm the co-owner of Wouldn't It Be Nice Furniture Repair. Today on the workbench, I've got this upholstered furniture. This stool has a leg here that has come loose. In order to repair that, I need to take the upholstery off. Now this might seem intimidating, but I'm going to walk you through and show you how it's done, because I think once you've seen how it's done, you'll have some confidence in taking on a project like this yourself. This is also a unique stool in that these joints are spline joints, and spline joints are not common joints in furniture. So it'll be unique to go through this repair. I hope you'll enjoy it. Stick with me, I'll show you how it's done.
As a furniture repair business, we're opening the doors to our workshop to show you the tools and techniques to repair furniture.
The front rail here, you can see this has been broken off.
We give you tips to make your repair projects easier. Let's get into the workshop and start fixing furniture.
Sponsored by Kennedy Hardware, offering restoration hardware for antique furniture. This is a really good example of an upholstered piece of furniture where the upholstery is holding the stool together. So there's upholstery underneath, there's upholstery on top. Once I remove those, this should just literally fall apart. There are a couple broken splines in here that I'll need to replace. So the first thing to do is turn it over and take off the dust cover. Now a dust cover is typically black fabric, but here it's actually quite ornate. So I'll remove these tacks here and we'll see what's underneath. I'll just put some padding down here just so I don't stain the fabric, and I can pull out the tack lifter. If you don't own a tack lifter, it's an inexpensive tool and one that's very valuable. So a tack lifter has a split area in the middle and it's wedge shaped. So that allows you to get underneath a tack and progressively pull it out, and then you can leverage the tack out. When you're using a tack lifter, you need something to provide force at the end. So you can use a hammer, or the other thing you can use is a mallet. So a mallet like this. But you have to then pay attention to where the head is hitting the back of the tack lifter. So that's where I prefer using a carver's mallet, because regardless of where I twist my wrist here, I'm providing force at the back, and that way I can focus on the front of the tack lifter. It doesn't really matter where you start. I've got a piece of fabric that's pulled off here, so I'm going to go underneath this tack. So it's just a matter of going in at a bit of an angle, driving it in, flattening it out, getting underneath that tack, and then you can lever out the tack. So tacks are pretty small, so this is a pretty easy job to go through and do this. I'll show you up close on the next one. So I'm going under here. I don't want to tear the fabric, so I go down at the wood, just gently tap it in, level that out, get underneath, and there's the tack. And you can see these tacks, as long as they're in good shape, you can reuse them. Let's take a look at what we've got under here. Here we've got some webbing, so that's these strips here, and they crisscross to provide support. And there's some burlap here. We'll get to this underneath, and it looks like we've got some horsehair as well. I'll finish taking this off and we'll flip it over. So on the top side, we don't have any exposed tacks here, and the way this is attached is usually adhesive. So if I pull this, it's starting to come away. Yeah, so it's a matter of gently working it off so we can preserve this decorative strip and it can be used again. Now there is a tack right here, so let me just pull that out. There we go. In an area like this, you do have to be careful. You can see that the fabric is splitting a little bit there. So if I were to put a lot of force on this, I could force a tear up here. So I'm just going to use the tack lifter here to hold the fabric down as I separate the pieces. Now this part of the upholstery here is called the gimp, and all it's doing is hiding all these tacks that are underneath here. So when you go to put it back on, hot glue is a great adhesive for putting gimp on. Now when you get to a particularly tough spot here where the fabric doesn't seem to want to separate, it can help to work the opposite direction. So I'll just peel up this corner here. And there's a tack underneath there. And then what I'll do is work backwards this way to get that to release. You can use the video function on a smartphone, and that way you can document how this is coming apart so you know how it goes back together again. Most of this has come off without a problem, but here it's really stuck. So what I'm doing is just very carefully using a sharp knife and separating the fabric. I've now got all the tacks exposed, so I can take those out. Now, to avoid damaging the woodwork, I don't want to work this way because I might come across and scratch it. If I go this way, I could potentially mar up the edge here. So what I want to do is work across the piece this way. So I'll show you how this works. Just gently tap underneath and pull the tack out. Sometimes workshop accidents happen, and tacks are one of those potentials. You can see I had an accident recently on my YouTube award where I put a dent in it. You want to make sure that the tack doesn't stand upright on the floor because it can become a hazard for stepping on. So I've got one side loose here, but before I go any further, what I want to show you is this looks rather flat and the fabric underneath here has sagged. So if I push it up where it should be, you can see there's a bit of a pillow top here. So this is something we'll correct when we put it back together again. Okay, the last tacks are off, so I can pull the cover off. And here we've got some cotton, and then this is muslin, so this is the next layer that needs to come off. Okay, so the muslin is now loose, and under this we've got cotton and horsehair and burlap and edge roll. If you're a member of our Fixing Furniture community, go to the downloadable reference sheet and you've got all the labeled parts there to help you understand this. If you're not part of our membership, you can go to fixingfurniture.com and you can check out all the benefits you get there, including watching our videos without any commercials. We're now down to the worn out components of this chair. This burlap here, you can see it's worn right through, and the webbing here is just way too loose. So this has to come off. I'll put new material on when I put this back together again. Now the tacks that I've got here, I'm just going to save and reuse. I'll use these when I put the new webbing on. So the footstool is all stripped down now, and we can appreciate the craftsmanship in this. This is about 2-inch walnut here, so a significant block of walnut, and there's no sap wood in this at all, so very high quality. One thing I can see here is a reflection of chisel marks. So this recessed area here, this was all carved out by hand. And the part that we need to repair is here. So this is a spline joint, and what it is 2 separate pieces of wood that each have a groove cut in them, and then the spline is inserted there. So that's what keeps it together. There's been a few modifications here. So if I zoom out, you can see we've got 2 light color blocks and 2 walnut blocks. So I think these walnut blocks were original, Someone's added these in, and you can see there's a finishing nail sticking out for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. And over here, I also noticed that there's a glob of glue. So it's the only place that's like that. And these two pieces don't exactly match. I can feel on the profile underneath here, they're not lined up well. So this has been repaired at some point, and there's a bit of fabric that had glue that had attached with the glue when it was applied. So there has been a repair here at least once. So the next thing to do is take this apart, and I'll take the corner blocks off first, and this should just fall apart. The glue on this corner block here has long let go, so it should just come out. There are a couple nails just holding it in. I can tell by the look of the glue that this is hide glue, so these definitely have been here. I think probably from the origins of when this was built. So with this out of the way, let's check this out. Yeah, you see how this is just moving? So we'll get that fixed up. Take this other side out. Okay, so the way to test the legs is to try to flare them, bring them back and forth. And by pulling them this way, I can tell that these are tight joints. Let's see back here. Yeah, those are tight joints. Here, I've got no play in this joint, no play in this joint. So it is really just these two. For some reason, they both let go. And it could be that maybe this footstool, the legs were jarred at some point. So let's take a closer look here at the glue. So there's not much glue residue here. But if we go over to this side here, you can see there's a bunch of glue here. And what that means is when this was glued together, there was good wood contact here, but not here. Let's take a look at the other side. So here, we can take a look and see, yeah, we've got glue residue at the top there. So we need to make sure that we get a good mating surface between these two, so we don't have that gap, because glue can't hold when there's a gap. Let's look at this side. Huh, the same here. So it could be perhaps that the spline is a little bit too long and it's preventing this from closing up. So what I'll need to do is clean off the glue, make sure we get a nice tight fit, and then I can glue it and clamp it back together. I vacuumed off the work area here to make sure there are no tacks that will scratch the wood when I put them down here. So I can now scrape off this old glue. Here's a close-up. I've scraped the glue off all along here. I left a little bit here so you could see the difference. And here there's something that's a little bit rubbery, and this is PVA glue. So someone else has been at this trying to repair it. There's a few loose pieces of spline here I'll have to take out and re-glue as well. The glue I'm clearing off on this side has a rubbery consistency to it. You can see here it's rubbery. And that means it's PVA glue. So all of this residue in here is PVA, which means someone probably had this open up at one point, put some glue in here, and tried to glue it together. But if you don't have a clean surface of bare wood, PVA glue just doesn't work. So I'll take this back to bare wood, and when I glue this together, I'll put it together with hide glue. With the glue cleaned off of everything, what I want to do is test the fit. See if there are any gaps. And it's rocking over here. So I've got a nice tight fit here, but there's still a gap on this side of the joint. So I think that's somebody who was fitting this piece and they left a gap. So I'll have to fill that gap with a piece of veneer because that gap won't allow these two pieces to glue together with any wood glue. Here's a piece of veneer here. If I put that in there, I've got a little bit of a gap on this side, so I just need to sand that down, get it the right thickness, and we've got a solution. We've now got a nice tight joint across here and a tight fit here, and that means that this whole joint is going to last for decades to come. I'll do the same thing on this side, and then we'll be ready for the glue up. Okay, I'm all ready for the glue up here. So I'm using hide glue for this, and I generally talk about this in a lot of my videos of why I use hide glue. If you know the answer, put it in the comments. So put glue on all the surfaces, the cheeks of this, not the end. And I use a brush here to spread the glue around. That way I make sure I've got full glue coverage on all of the parts. Now veneer is typically thirstier wood than the rest here, so I just have to layer on a little bit more glue. And don't worry about having too much glue. It's much better than not having enough, because if you don't have enough, it's not going to stay together. When you're working on finished pieces, the glue will wipe off the finish, so there's no concerns there. So this piece of veneer I had to get very thin here just to get it the right dimension. It goes from thin to thick. But that just to make sure that we've got the right fit. We're going to have a good seal at the front here where it's visible, while providing the structure behind the scenes to hold everything together. Now there's a bit of a debate in the woodworking world of whether you should be putting glue on both sides of a joint. And I err on the side of yes, you should. Because if you skip a small spot on one side, you're guaranteed to catch it on the other. So, as I said, don't spare on glue. This is what holds the furniture together. So here's where it all comes together. This is a fairly simple glue up, but the key thing here is to make sure when I clamp it up that it's level on the workbench. So I'll take away the padding here and get it stood up. And the key to a good glue up is alignment and glue squeeze out. So I'll put this on here. Pieces are aligned, and there. You can see we've got glue squeeze out. That's what we want to see. I'll show you again on this side. I apply the clamping pressure. We'll get good glue squeeze out right across that joint. Apply a second clamp below the first one, just to make sure we've got good strong clamping pressure across that full joint. I just have to clean up the glue squeeze out, and then I'll let this dry. Then I can trim off the veneer and put in the corner blocks. For our members on our Fixing Furniture community, we do have a downloadable reference sheet on how to choose the right glue for your project, as well as a reference sheet on the different types of glue. This is one of many reference sheets we've got for the Fixing Furniture community. If you're not a member, you can check that out at fixingfurniture.com. I'm all ready to reinstall the upholstery, and I have some new components here. I've got brand new webbing and I've got some brand new canvas to replace the worn out parts. Now the webbing has to be stretched very tight. That way we've got good support when someone sits on the stool, and it will also provide a nice rounded top when we've got this piece finished. So for the webbing here, we've got 3 pieces across each side. I'm just going to center it here, and to speed up the process a bit, I'll be using a mix of the staple gun with tacks. The job for this, you need a tack hammer, and the reason is because one side is magnetic, so it holds the tack in place. It's very difficult to hold a nail that short, so with a tack, all you need to do is stab it in and then hammer it home. So now what I can do is stretch this out, so I'll just give myself lots of webbing here, and you need a stretcher for this. So if I just try and pull up by hand, you can see I'm not getting any tension here, but a webbing stretcher allows you to get some leverage. So I'll insert this roughly here, and then what I can do is push down on the webbing and get some tension. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so I can cut this off now, double it over, and put some tack nails in. I can now put on the webbing here and here, but when I put them on this way, they have to weave in and out, and I'll show you how that's done. So I'm going to work on the center here, but as I mentioned before, these have to be crisscrossed to support each other. So I'm going underneath here, over here, underneath here, and then back up, and I can nail it on. Then the opposite ones here and here happen so they'll go over the top, under the middle, and that just provides good strong support for the whole seat. Well, with that done, the next step is to put on the new burlap. So I'll cut that, fit that to size. I'm going to use a mix of the stapler and the tacks so that the tacks are visible at the very end, but the stapler is just going to make things move a lot faster. So there you go. We've now got a footstool with joinery that's going to last for decades to come, and it's a firm seat with a nice pillow top. Now we've got another upholstery piece coming up in a few videos. If you recall, there were some videos I did at Trafalgar Castle. They've got a celebration coming up and they've asked me to restore some more furniture for them. So if you haven't seen that video yet, I'll leave a link to it right here. You can check that out. Thank you for watching Fixing Furniture.